It has been said that pawns are the soul of chess. Even though a pawn is the least valuable piece on the chessboard, the combined strength or weakness of your pawns can be the difference between winning or losing a game. Connected pawns can be very powerful. Let's take a look at some examples. In this position, white's pawns are connected in a row on a2, b2, and c2. Notice that black's king on a4 will have to make several moves before it can attack any of those pawns. If black plays bishop to e6, attacking the a2 pawn, notice that white can play a3. Moving the pawn out of danger, and black's king cannot capture the a3 pawn because it's protected by the pawn on b2. The ability of connected pawns to support one another is a powerful resource to have. Let's take a look at this position. Black has two pawns that are doubled on c5 and c6. Neither of these pawns can be protected by the other pawn, and the c6 pawn is frozen because the c5 pawn is in its way. So white can play bishop a4, threatening to capture the pawn on c6, and since it cannot move due to being blocked, white will win the targeted pawn on the next move. Remember, pawns are stronger together and weaker when apart. In this position, black has pawns on a6 and c6. Since neither pawn can be protected by the other pawn, they are considered isolated pawns and are often targets of attack. Notice white can play king to c5, attacking the c6 pawn, and black cannot protect the isolated pawn. White also had the option of playing bishop to c4, threatening the pawn on a6. Connected pawns in a group are considered to be one pawn island. The fewer pawn islands you have, the easier it is to protect your pawns. Look at this position. White has pawns on h4, g3, f2, e2, d3, and c4, all connected as one island. Compare this to black. Black has an isolated pawn on h7, one island, pawns on e7 and f6, a second island, and doubled pawns on c6 and c5, a third island. Notice white can play rook g7, attacking two pawn islands at once by threatening to capture the pawns on h7 and e7. Black's king is able to defend one of these pawns, but not both. After king d7, rook takes h7. As white only has one pawn island, black's rook can only attack e2 with rook a2, which is easily defended by the white king with king f3. Now that you've learned the strengths and weaknesses of different pawn setups, it's your turn to attack and defend pawn structures.